It is time to respond to some more autism-related Am I the Asshole posts on Reddit, where basically people post about something they did, something that happened, and say, was I in the wrong? And then people get to vote on it. The first one is, am I the asshole for inviting my son's entire class except for one child because of his autism that he carries around with him as a separate entity, not a part of him? Okay. I suppose perhaps that separation makes you feel a bit better about yourself. So on reading that, I'm gonna guess that my answer is yes, you are the asshole. But let's read it, let's give them a chance. My son's 10th. Oh, so he's 10. Birthday is next Saturday. Me and my husband have planned a party for him. To make sure we gave everyone enough time, we got invitations ready 2 weeks in advance and had my son pass them out Friday. 2 weeks in advance? Does 2 weeks sound like that much time to you? I'd be like, oh, this is a short notice thing. We invited everyone in his class. He goes to a small private school. So there were only 15 kids to invite, except for one child, well called David. The school my son goes to has a program for special needs kids where they put them into a normal, I suppose at least you'd put the quotation marks around it, class once a week. David is a high-functioning autistic child who was put in my son's class to help him socialize and to help other kids to learn not to discriminate against special needs people. Well, it seems like the parents also might need a lesson or two. Seems like a bit of an unfortunate role that David is put in here, having to try and teach everybody to be good people. Yikes. From what I know about him and his mother, they are just doing their best, and I have nothing against either of them. We'll see. However, there have been incidents with David before. Last year, through friends, I had heard that David had a meltdown at another party he was invited to. So through friends, I had heard. I liked this image of these gossipy parents whispering about a 10-year-old autistic child's meltdown. I don't know if I believe it, but parents who were there say it was because he wanted to open presents like the birthday boy and when told no, freaked out. There are other logistical problems as well. The party will be in a loud arcade, so in the end I decided not to invite David. Okay. I don't want to comment too much on it here. Obviously, I don't like the phrase high functioning, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I just kind of want to read the post first. I just feel like, did you ask? Doesn't it sound like she knows an awful lot about David? Sounds like a lot of it is speculation and what's been heard through the grapevine and all that stuff. It sounds like it's all been very gossipy. Does she know that David would actually have a problem with the arcade? Has she asked? Has she said, I'm not sure if this is an environment David would like to be in? And then his mother might say, oh, he'll be all right as long as he has his headphones, and if it gets too noisy, we can go home. Maybe just don't assume that an autistic person is going to have a problem with something. We're all very different. He could find it very, very stimulating with all the flashing lights and sounds, and maybe he loves games, and maybe he'd actually have a great time and really come out of himself. You just don't know. It is not a blanket rule that autistic people can't go to arcades. Well, after my son passed the invitations, word spread around that we had to exclude the special needs child in his class. This got back to David's mother, who called me last night and confronted me about this. She told me that I am awful for excluding her son and that I'm teaching my son to discriminate. When I brought up the logistics and the past incidents, she told me that I'm an arsehole for assuming what my son can and can't do before hanging up. I woke up this morning to a passive-aggressive post by her, and many other parents are siding with her. I just want my son to have a good party and didn't mean anything by this. Am I the arsehole? Okay, but she just wants her son to have a good life where he isn't discriminated against, though. You didn't mean anything by this. You didn't mean for your actions to have consequences on somebody else. You did mean it. You did mean, I don't want him here in case he makes a meltdown and causes a scene and ruins my child's birthday, even though I've invited every other child and I know how that will feel. Now, I understand parents wanting to protect their children and give them a good day and, wanting these sort of events to go perfectly and all that kind of thing. But children are children. Children are chaotic. Like, anybody can have a flipping meltdown at a children's party. Have you been to a children's party? Someone will cry. Someone might end up going to A&E. I mean, they're 10, so maybe it'll be a little bit calmer, but no. As a parent, it's not just about giving your child a wonderful time. It's also about showing them how to be a decent person. Let's unpack it a bit further. She says that he is high functioning. I don't know what she means by high functioning. Does she mean that he communicates verbally? Often when people say high functioning, they mean you can't really tell that they're autistic and that they seem relatively normal on a surface level, or you might mean that they don't have a comorbid learning disability. In which case, I find that hard to imagine that he was trying to open the birthday boy's presents at 10 years old. It doesn't really make much sense to me. But again, this was all just rumors. The words incidents to me is not great, and it's like plural, but then she's only describing this one situation that she wasn't there and has just basically heard gossip about. What I think would have been the right thing to do personally would be to call up David's mom, say, would David like to come? We're going to invite him, explain what the environment will be, say, no worries if he feels like he doesn't want to come, that's fine, but not in a way of like, trying to insinuate that he shouldn't come. But if he does want to come along, is there anything we can do to make it better for him, to improve the environment for him? Obviously, if your son wants a party at an arcade, you don't have to change the fact that the party's at an arcade, but maybe David would be fine if he had his headphones on. You can get some like ear defenders or something, and maybe he would be all right. Maybe there are things you can do to make it better. Maybe you could even ask the arcade, I don't know if you're hiring out the whole arcade or what the situation is. Maybe there's even little tweaks that they could make that wouldn't really affect anyone else. Sometimes music at these things is too loud anyway, and I think everyone would agree it's too loud. Like maybe they could turn the music down a bit, something like that. Just to be kind and to be compassionate and to want everybody to have a good time. I can understand, like, from a financial perspective, not always wanting to invite everyone to a party, and maybe, if your son doesn't get on with particular people, maybe not inviting them, but you invited the whole class. I didn't mean anything by it. You knew you were going to make him feel like an outsider. Can you imagine how much of his life he has been made to feel like an outsider, and how much he is probably going to be made to feel like an outsider? His mom would have probably taken him home if he had a meltdown or a situation became too overwhelming. I don't think she would want her child to be there distressed. It's like you just felt like you wanted your child's party to be perfect and you wanted to leave this one imperfection out of it. It's such a horrible stigmatizing way to see disability, and that's the whole point of this program supposedly in the school, is exposing children to different ways of being so that children understand. I hope that the school's doing a good job and maybe are teaching them how to interact with autistic children and why autistic children might have meltdowns and how we can try and support autistic children. I don't know whether they are doing that. That was never really a thing that happened when I was at school and there was an autistic boy in my class. I was in the same school as him for primary school and high school, and it was only in high school, once the bullying got too bad, they had to step in and do a talk and explain what Aspergers at the time was to everybody by using examples from the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime rather than examples of what this actual individual liked and disliked. They kind of just explained the condition in general. I don't know, was this whole school thing just like throw David in at the deep end? Oh, you should socialize, go and do that. Did they actually spend any time teaching the children how David might want to be interacted with, or is it all on David's end? David got to be the one to figure out how to socialize the neurotypical way. Yeah, I think this mom doesn't know a lot about autism and autistic meltdowns, and she's scared and maybe even a bit repulsed, which I think is a kind of common, unfortunately, response to disability. Look, I understand your concern about the meltdown, but you could have spoken to his parents beforehand about the environment and potential ways to mitigate that. Phew, I'm relieved, because the last reaction I did to AmITheA, the commenters on Reddit and I did not agree. Really, you can wait your ass in line. Anything over that is entitled. Oh my gosh, everyone's kicking off. This is crazy. I'll leave that one linked. You could have spoken to your son's teacher to see if she has any advice. Exactly, the teacher. I didn't even think of that. For how David is in group situations. You don't even know how his behavior may have improved over the past year. So true. This would have been a good chance to teach your son to include people. Yep. And instead, you told him it's okay to exclude someone if the disability makes your fun time slightly more difficult. Yeah. You are the arsehole. This happened to my son a lot when he was younger. It's hurtful to deliberately exclude with no warning. For anything my son was invited to, I would either go and stay with him, leaving early if needs be, yep, or if I checked out the venue in advance and thought it wouldn't be practical, I would decline the invite but say thank you. Yeah, he can choose if he's really going to be that bad for him. I would hope, seeing as the mom seems to care, the fact that she called up suggests that she cares. I don't know her, and hopefully she wouldn't want her son to be upset. When someone's having a meltdown, they're not deliberately trying to ruin your good time. They are in distress. So he would probably be wanting to leave the party at that stage. so you wouldn't have to worry about the meltdown anymore. Excluding on the basis of a disability isn't something to teach your child. Not to mention it's the 10th birthday party at an arcade. OP, don't you realize how many meltdowns will occur that day even without David? I said that because it's going to be competition and people are going to be losing, right, aren't they? And they're going to be like sore losers. Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, I'm so glad people agree with me. It feels so like the last one with the ADHD theme park situation and whether she should use the disability line and whether she was eligible for that. I just disagreed so much with the commenters and I felt like, oh my gosh, am I going crazy? Luckily, the comments on the video restored my faith in humanity. Thank you for everyone who commented on that video. Great point. I sincerely doubt that none of the other kids in the class have ever melted down at a party. There'll probably be quite a lot of children with ADHD who just aren't diagnosed, or it's just, you know, not really seen as much of a big deal as autism, who may be quite boisterous and break something, or, you know, they might not even have ADHD. They might just be, you know, having a good time and have had a lot of sugar. I don't know if sugar actually does make people hyperactive, but, you know, there might just be general disruption with children. Oh, there's a kid with high functioning autism in my daughter's class. When she had her first friends party, she invited him. His parents were really emotional when they RSVP'd. He doesn't get invited to stuff ever. He came with his mom. There were a couple of glitches, but everyone had fun. He's been a fixture ever since and now invites both her and her little sister to his birthday parties too. He's a cool kid and we've been lucky to include him and to be included by him. OP has no idea what she's potentially missing out on. Yeah. Do you even want to go to a smelly arcade party anyway, David? Probably not. You probably got a lot of cool things to do. I'm sure you do. You are the asshole. You should have invited David and you should have extended kindness to David. Am I the asshole for ordering nachos? Is how it starts. Even though it deeply offended and set off my brother-in-law's autism and sensory issues. Right, let me just say, autism is not something that you set off. You are autistic. It might trigger a negative emotional response for that person. It might feel unpleasant in that person as a result of the fact that they are neurodivergent. The autism hasn't come out, you know, it's not like a werewolf, it comes out at the full moon. It was always there. Do you know what I mean? My brother-in-law is 32, wife and I are 25, and while I don't doubt that some of his issues are real, autism, ADHD, set point obesity, don't know why that was relevant, it is my distinct impression that he exploits people's perception of these things to be a controlling prick. Okay, I feel like this is going to be hard because we can only see one side of the story. In the family, saying such things is completely forbidden, however. We offered to take my mother-in-law and father-in-law out for Easter dinner so no one has to cook. The timing offered was strategic. We knew brother-in-law had planned on watching TikTok live stream of some 19-year-old influencer who's blowing up right now. But I guess either he got the time wrong or she cancelled early, so my heart sank when he was coming along because I knew there was going to be drama. Alright, it's really tricky when I don't know anything about him. Does he want to be there? Did his parents say he had to come along? Was he allowed to stay at home? Can he stay at home on his own? We went to a place famous for bar food and I ordered nachos. My wife begged me to order something else, but she wasn't direct with me about the problem and I didn't get her hints. Did you ask? It's like, does no one know how to communicate in this family? Did you ask? Why don't you want me to order the nachos? I don't know, maybe it was like a slightly like awkward environment where I was just like, don't get the nachos, don't get the nachos. As soon as I took my first bite, my brother-in-law started shrieking like a child and throwing a little tantrum that the crunch was killing him and he's going to lose it because black olives don't belong on nachos because they're from Spain, not Mexico. My wife, mother-in-law and father-in-law told me I really screwed up and that I was making him uncomfortable. In a moment of pure honesty, I told them the lists of not alloweds around Brian is so long and fucking ridiculous. Thank you, I don't have to censor that now. That I can't keep up. My wife said she tried to tell me. I said, no you didn't. You pussyfooted around it like we do every time this creep really ruins a family function. Brother-in-law, father-in-law, and mother-in-law got up and left us with the bill. And needless to say, things between me and my wife have been tense ever since and we really haven't spoken. Y'all need to, so I don't know why I said y'all. I'm from England. But you need to communicate. You haven't spoken. Like, I never understand this. If I have an issue with like my partner or something, I have to speak about it straight away. I'm like, let's converse, let's solve this, otherwise I cannot rest. I am absolutely the arsehole for my choice of words after he freaked out, okay? Some self-awareness, and I get that, but I also think things needed to be said. But my question is, am I the asshole for ordering the nachos? My wife says I should have known since she's told me, and I have to have noticed that they can never have chips around because his misophonia can't handle the crunch. Am I the asshole here? Oh my gosh. I feel like this this one's a minefield. How does everybody else feel about this? I think, to me, I don't know enough about the brother-in-law, so I feel a little bit funny making judgments. I also can't hear his side of the story. The poster himself seems like he has a lot of resentment, a lot of anger towards this guy. It just seems like he doesn't like him, and we're only hearing his side of the story. And he did call him a creep. In the last video I did, the first one I responded to was like, am I the asshole for weaponizing my autism? I feel like this one, he kind of is weaponizing his autism. I feel like everyone around him seems to be walking on eggshells, and it seems like he himself is just expecting everyone around him to do exactly what he says all of the time and not making any changes himself. And I don't really think that that's fair. I feel like it needs to be a little bit more kind of like give and take, and that other people are respectful of him and his issues, but he also does things himself to try and make things better. So if you really hate the noise of people eating that much, then headphones are an option, some sort of ear defenders. Could watch something on his phone if you wanted to, listen to some music, or don't go to the restaurant perhaps. I have misophonia, so it's where you feel dysphoria, basically some sort of negative emotion, a very strong reaction in your body, a physiological reaction that kind of sends you into fight or flight from just small sounds. Eating sounds can be a big one. It can also be yawning. People biting their nails is really horrible. When I hear my husband, he doesn't whistle. If he starts whistling, I'm like, can you stop? And he does, and he knows that. Sometimes I do feel a bit bad because I'm like, it's his stimming, you know, it's what makes him happy. But at the same time, he can do other things, like he can sing. I don't mind singing doesn't bother me unless I'm really trying to concentrate on something. There are other things that you can do, but sometimes I will, if possible, I will move out of the room. If I'm tired, the misophonia stuff can be worse, and therefore I will take myself out of the situation because I feel like it's not you, it's me, you know. But at the same time, sometimes I'd really like to be in the same room with him. I don't want to leave the room, so it's kind of like, I'd rather sit with you and be here, so would you mind maybe not whistling? And sometimes I can snap because it's quite a not nice response that it gives me. I kind of just be like, please stop. And I try and make a joke of it sometimes. I know it offends him, and it makes him sometimes feel a bit self-conscious because he doesn't want to upset me, and he's just, you know, living his best life, having a little whistle, you know. It's not trying to annoy me. And so yeah, it's just a balance, it's a give and take. My husband's not autistic, but you know, obviously people who aren't autistic can stim as well, and he you know, it's just an expression of him being happy, and I don't want to make him feel like he can't be happy around me. I would never want to stop somebody from eating a food that they love. For me, sensory issue wise, I don't like the smell of a lot of foods. Personally, I wouldn't stop somebody ordering something even if I was really grossed out by it. My husband actually hates crisps, and you know, like the little crumbs that get on your finger from crisps, even though he's not neurodivergent himself, he just hates it. I think someone in primary school, what did they do? Did they take some of his food when they had crisps all over his hands and kind of ruined it, or did touch something of his, or I don't know, he's got past trauma with these crisp crumbs, right? But he gets really funny with me if I eat crisps around him. I'm like, I would never do that. I have so many sensory things with food. I would never want to do that. Yeah, if I was in that case, if my misophonia was that bad, if I was having a really bad day and I felt like it was worse than normal, I would probably personally wear headphones or not go. But I don't know what level of support needs this person has. I don't know what level of independence he has. He still seems like he's living at home at 32. He was watching a TikTok of someone who's quite a lot younger than him. I'm not sure if that contributes to the fact that he was called a creep in this post. I don't know what it is. I don't know what he's watching. They said it was female, but it could be to do with a special interest. It could be to do with a game that he likes. Like, it's not necessarily creepy. But maybe it is, but I don't have enough information to make that judgment. I don't like the language used about the brother-in-law, but it sounds like there's probably a lot of pent-up frustration from previous things that have happened. I don't know, maybe if I was in his shoes, it would be kind of understandable. It does seem frustrating that the wife doesn't seem very good at communicating. Like, she was just saying, oh, don't order nachos. But I mean, you also then said like the list of things we can't do around him is so long, so did maybe part of you know that might have been why she was saying don't order the nachos? Part of me is like, well, maybe it would have been nice if he does particularly have an issue with crunch. Maybe it still would have been a nice thing to do if there was something else on the menu that you could have enjoyed. It's, you know, wonderful if people accommodate and kind of change the way they do things to make life easier and make life more pleasant and protect the mental health of a neurodivergent person. That's great, but obviously everyone else is human too. Everyone else has a right to exist as well, and there has to be a little bit of balance, and you can't let someone just dictate and dominate and make everybody else miserable. You do need to obviously do things to manage yourself as well as asking for accommodations, and I feel like most autistic people do that and do understand that. I don't think you're the asshole for ordering the nachos. I think you agree that you probably were the asshole in how you reacted and what actually led them to leave. It doesn't really seem like a healthy family situation though, where everybody is valued and respected. Sometimes autistic people can actually be quite strong personalities, and perhaps the parents are quite passive, and maybe he's just been allowed to kind of like bulldoze through and change all the rules. Someone said not the asshole, nacho problem. There we are. Said it better than I could have said it. No, not the asshole. No one can let their problems move to other people. If brother-in-law can't cope, then he has to remove himself from those situations. What would he have done if the people at the table right next to him ordered the nachos? I mean, yeah, that would be further away, like not kind of right next to you. Whereabouts at the table was he sitting? Could he sit in a different place or something like that? I don't know if I agree with no one can let their problems move to other people. Yeah, that's kind of true, but I also feel like for neurodivergent people, it's really nice, you know, if people do try and make our experience as pleasant as possible. Like in the previous one with David at the party, you know, it's a really nice thing to do and it's really appreciated. But yeah, just the way it was like, oh, just don't have the nachos. I'm not going to say why. It seems like, not to use an overused word, it seems like a bit of a toxic, controlling kind of environment. Yeah, that's not how autism works. If you have sensory issues related to the sound of the crunch, there's this magical thing known as headphones. They are very magical. They're great. Yeah, and he obviously likes watching things on TikTok, so he could have, you know, if there was Wi-Fi at the place, he could have been looking at things on his phone. I don't know. Not the asshole. I am an autistic adult with misophonia. Though brother-in-law seems to have far greater support needs than I do. That's what I mean. Yeah, I find it, to some extent, I find it difficult to comment too much on it because I'm like, I don't know him and I don't know his situation. Regardless, restaurants are one of my triggers and I know this, so I don't go to them when I'm having a rough day. Yeah, if he has been cared for by his parents and he doesn't know how to gauge his symptoms on his own, they need to help out by not putting him in a sensory nightmare. Yeah, I agree that. He most likely cannot help his reactions. Yeah, but your wife should have been 100% transparent and explicit when communicating her brother's needs to you. Yeah, for sure. You can't be expected to read someone's mind. You can't accommodate someone if you don't know what their needs are. Yeah, I agree. The parents aren't really helping. Like, if the crunch really is killing him and is that bad, why have they taken him to this environment without headphones? And maybe he does have higher support needs. Maybe he does need them to say, look, we've got you some headphones, we've brought your headphones along, rather than just trying to look the other way and kind of pretend his issues don't exist by making other people edit their actions to try and avoid him having this sort of response. We can actually accept that he's autistic and he finds these environments pretty unbearable, it seems, from the post, and therefore we maybe need to get him some headphones. A high-functioning adult, I've worked with ASD folks and they can learn to get over some of those fears. You can't get over misophonia. That is an involuntary response, but you can choose how to handle that. It's not a fear, it's a physical response that you get to the sound. And just because you've worked with someone with autism, everybody is different, so you can't really, you know, say anything. Even me using examples of like, well, I would just do this, like, okay, but I'm not in someone else's brain or body. It seems like someone has not worked with him over the years and has simply pussyfooted around with teaching another adult. Someone has not worked with him over the years. I mean, you can't un-autistic somebody, so I don't know what you mean by that. And a lot of therapy for autistic people is unfortunately quite abusive. What it seems like is maybe people have pussyfooted, the word of the day, around the fact that he's autistic. Maybe he has very explosive meltdowns, and therefore the threat of that means that people are tiptoeing around him. Not the asshole. These people catering to the guy have enabled him to be entitled and violent asshole. He should not be taken out to restaurants and his behaviour poses a risk to others. We don't think we have any evidence that it was a risk to others. I don't know, this just seems like such a complicated, messy thing, and I feel like maybe the parents are a little bit old-fashioned and deal with the fact that they have an autistic child by kind of hoping that if they don't talk about it too much and they don't look at it too much and everyone around him just behaves exactly as he wants to, then he won't have a meltdown, rather than actually helping himself to develop coping skills, and then also, you know, helping him out. You know, if nachos are a particular thing that really bothers him, maybe you can go without nachos for one day and it's fine and it will save him some pain. That's cool if you want to do that. What do you think? I think he's not the arsehole for ordering nachos, but I think that's a much bigger situation than just the nachos. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll put the playlist of the other videos I've made in this series. There's two of them. One has a girl who supposedly weaponized her autism, and also another quite young girl who had just been diagnosed with ADHD, who was wondering if it's alright to use a disability pass at a theme park for ADHD and got completely annihilated in the comments. The other one was a family who decided to hide their daughter's autism diagnosis from her and not tell her even when she was being bullied. And then also a guy who joked about autism and wanted to know if his jokes were offensive. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!